Anyone can build products for their customers, but the brands that create crazy customer loyalty are the ones that build products with their customers. Not sure what I mean? Well, my guest today, Mark Engels from ePayPolicy, is going to tell you exactly what that means and why it's important and why you ought to think about doing that in your own agency. So let's get started. Mark Engels is the CEO of ePayPolicy, a modern payments platform built just for insurance carriers, brokers, and agencies. Before ePay, Mark served as the Chief Revenue Officer for Hyperwallet, which is acquired by PayPal, and then for PayPal, where he led the sales and growth initiatives for both companies. Mark has seen the rapid digital transformation of payments firsthand, having spent most of his career leading teams in the space. Welcome to Agents Growth Academy. Mark, what's going on, man?
Hey, Jim. How are you, man? Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's always good to have you. I appreciate ePayPolicy being a sponsor of the show, first and foremost. But what that means for me more than anything is that every once in a while, I get to have some really cool conversations with you.
Yeah, no, it's great. I know we were catching up before we started the recording. It's good to reconnect. It's been a minute.
Yeah, and you and I are both going through the same exact thing right now because my son graduated from high school last night, and I think your daughter's graduating when?
Next week. Yeah, next Thursday.
Week. Yeah, so God bless you, man.
It's exciting times. Yeah, my wife and I will be empty nesters this fall, and jokingly, we looked at each other the other night. We were like, it's a good thing we still like each other because it's just you and me again here pretty soon. So. It's exciting times. Excited for her. The next chapter will begin.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Next time we catch up, we're going to have to find out if you and your wife are still on speaking terms or if you've found your own space in the house or no, I'm kidding.
Yeah. We got some really good advice actually from some friends in the neighborhood that are empty nesters. And they said, it is a tricky transition, right? Because for us, she's our youngest and our oldest is 20. So for the last 20 years, we've had kids in the house, and that's your responsibility, right? As a parent, making sure that they're taken care of. And so to help in that transition, they were like, plan a trip. After you drop her off, plan a trip, and the two of you go somewhere fun and just relax and enjoy yourself. So that's what we did. We planned a trip, and like literally the day after we drop her off and move her into her dorm room, we're hopping on a plane and going on a trip. So
heck yeah, man. Where are you going?
We're going to go down to Playa del Carmen for a few nights.
Oh yeah. Love that. That's awesome. Yeah. It's a great way to like reconnect with the person that you're going to be spending even more time with.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, I want to get into it. I loved, I asked my guests like, hey, if this episode were a masterclass, what would the title be? And I love the title that you provided, which was building products with your customers. And I made sure in the intro to put the emphasis on with, because that's a lot different than just building a product for your customers, right? So tell me what that's about. Why is that important? Was there like a pivotal moment for you that made the light bulb go on or what?
Yeah, look, I've spent the last 20 plus years of my career really primarily on the revenue generation sales side of the business. And through that process, it's not really rocket science. If you're willing to go out, talk to your customers and listen to them, they will tell you what their big pain points are. And then if you can actively engage with them on an eloquent way to solve those problems, you're not really selling anymore. You're simply helping them run their business more efficiently. And that tends to take care of itself in terms of top line revenue growth. And so really when I showed up on the scene here a few years ago, as you and I were talking about before we hopped on, I've been in payments for 25 years, but was relatively new to the insurance industry. So I knew I had a lot to learn. So my team and I got out on the road, and we spent the first, call it 9 months on the job, just out in front of our customers, learning about their business, how we help them at the current time with our core payment page technology, integrated payment page for digital payment acceptance, but also asking them the very open-ended question, how else can we help? What other parts of your business, are manual and cause you a lot of headache that we might be able to assist and make more efficient? And there were a few key themes that emerged from that. One was paper checks still a big part of the insurance ecosystem. As much as they love what we do on the digital payment side, folks still write checks. And so, you can either bash your head against that wall and say checks are going to die at some point while 60% of the payments coming into their office are still paper, or we could take a step back and say, how do we help them solve that problem? Right. And so we engaged with them on how we could help automate the reconciliation of those paper checks. And we built a product around that. The other key theme that emerged was, great, you help me take payments now and efficiently reconcile them into my ledger. But I've got to make payments to the carriers still, right? And I get all of these statements from them every month in all of these different formats. And the way that I solve it right now is I just keep throwing people at it, just more and more people as I scale my business. And that's obviously not efficient. So can you build some software leveraging the integration you already have into my core management system to help me automate that? And so we were like, wow, that's a big problem that I'm sure a lot of folks in the industry have. And we validated that with multiple customers. And so again, we engaged with them on what does that workflow look like today? How are you solving that? And how can we bring technology to bear against that problem to make it more efficient? And so that's how we generated the idea and created our Payables Connect product that we brought to market late last year to help them with the outbound payment going back to the carrier in the markets to simplify that reconciliation process. And then the last big theme that emerged, which is really interesting, we just launched this product early this year, was I sat in a fairly unique position because I did business with 7 of the top 10 premium finance companies in the US today. And then I also do business with 8,500 agencies today. Well, those agencies work with a lot of the premium finance companies that are customers of mine. And so the premium finance companies came to me and said, Mark, you realize you have access to all of the data that I need to generate a financing quote on a policy because you're integrated into their management system. And people are landing on your page anyway to make a payment in full. So why don't you just pull that data, send it to me, I'll generate back a financing quote and present it at checkout to the insured, and then they can decide whether they want to pay in full or finance right there. So we took a step back and we said, well, boy, that makes a hell of a lot of sense, right? Buy now, pay later is all the rage in e-commerce today. And so insurance had already figured a way to do that in terms of this whole cottage industry called premium finance, but nobody had eloquently done it by matching multiple PFCs to multiple agencies in an automated fashion. And so that's what we set out to do. And so we just rolled up the sleeves and sat down with our premium finance companies and our agencies and figured out how we can make that data exchange work in sort of a fluid manner to present the insured with optionality when they go to pay for their policy. And we've gotten great feedback from that. I think the really interesting thing is we've rolled it out and turned more agencies live. Obviously, the premium finance companies love it because it's basically a hands-free loan, right? The insured just signs up right there on our page. We book the loan back into the back-end system of the premium finance company, and they really don't have to touch it. So it's great for them. It's incremental volume.
It's too easy.
Yeah, exactly. And then, some of the feedback we got from the agents were, one, it's a more efficient process for them because they don't have to enter all the policy data into the premium finance company system. We automated that for them. But the other thing that I think I under-indexed on and didn't necessarily appreciate was just sort of the human element of the product, that we were able to remove some friction there. And by that, I mean, some agents were hesitant to ask their insured if they wanted to finance because they thought they were saying, hey, I think you don't have the money to pay me in full for this policy because of the size. And then on the flip side, some insureds were embarrassed to ask for financing options because they thought it implied they didn't have the money. So we took all of that friction and psychology out of the buying process and now just allow the insured to make the right decision for their business in terms of how they want to pay. So it brought an added element and benefit that I really wasn't necessarily expecting.
That's awesome. I mean, you helped a lot of different people in the process. It wasn't just like you started out wanting to solve problems for agents and agencies, but then you ended up helping out the premium finance companies, and
That's right.
that's pretty cool that you're able to kind of kill two birds with one stone in a sense.
Yeah, right.
You tell me kind of the response that you got on the premium finance side, and that's really cool that you talk about, like, and I wouldn't have even thought about that, the psychological aspects that were embedded in the ask for
Right.
to be able to finance. And like, well, what do you mean? What, like, what? But what was some of the response you're talking about? And by the way, whoever your marketing person is, unless you were the one that came up with the name Checkmate, which is just brilliant for the check
It was not
processing
me. I'm not
piece.
that creative. It was not me.
That was awesome. Tell me about some of the response you got from that, because that, like you said, going back to building products with your customers. Tell
Yeah.
me about what that process was like specifically, and the kind of response you got from that from agents.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So we had a hypothesis when we went into the build out of the product and started talking to our customers that that a lot of our really larger agencies, the top 100 agencies that we work with, already had this solved. I mean, they get tens of thousands of checks a month still.
Yeah.
So clearly, like, they've got it figured out. Well, what we learned as we were talking to them was, yeah, they had a lockbox solution set up through their bank, but they didn't have a real efficient way to reconcile the data. It was still very manual. And so the initial iteration of the product was, well, let's just build some software to help them automate the reconciliation of those check payments. And so this is where people ask me all the time, hey, do you guys use AI in your solutions? And this was actually the first form of AI that we introduced into an ePay product. So we basically took an off-the-shelf optical character reader solution to scan the checks and the remittance advices. But then we built a machine learning algorithm on top of it. And we've taught it where to look to pull the data elements that we need to use our software to reconcile back into the management system. So that was sort of phase one, sitting down with our large customers to say, look, I get it. You've got these massive treasury management relationships with these big banks that you work with. I'm not going to disrupt that. But let me make the reconciliation of the data more efficient. And then as we got downstream, started in the mid-market and the smaller agency space, they're like, look, I want you to do it all. Like, if you've got a lockbox solution and you can collect the checks for me and I don't have to touch them and you can help me reconcile it, great. So that was sort of the second iteration of the product, really spending a lot of time with that segment of our customer base, understanding their needs, and then building out the solution to be able to do all aspects of the check collection and reconciliation. So yeah, it's been, and I think with any of these things, like, you have, the initial use case, and you build on that, but then you iterate as you move forward, right? Like, as you start to uncover additional aspects that would be helpful to the client. We talk about product development here as a journey and not a destination. We'll always be iterating on our solutions as long as we're here. We continue to iterate on the core payment page that was started a decade ago, right? To make that better for our clients as well. So it's just sort of ingrained in the DNA and how we think about continuing to solve the problems for our customers.
That's awesome. And I mean, you guys have created like this ecosystem now. It's not just, a la carte items that you could choose from. I mean, it could be, right? Because I know for us, like, we've cut down on the number of checks that we receive personally in our agency to a point where, like, I don't know that would be super helpful for us, but I mean, every single other agency I know, that is a major problem, right? But you've created an ecosystem where any agency could come in and say, I want this, but then you're over here going, yeah, but what we've done to develop products with other agents is, creating this whole, like, cohesive solution essentially. And that's a pretty big deal. That's a hard task to pull
no
off.
doubt. And it's really interesting too, because I think it's changed the conversation that we have with prospective new clients. And so, as we're discussing sort of the solutions that we have, and the entire platform that we can bring to bear to help them solve their problems, we can really hone in on where they're feeling the most pain initially, and then sort of expand the other solutions that we bring to bear over the lifetime of the relationship. And so, I'll give you an example. We signed a sort of a mid-market agency recently, and they had never done digital payments before. Everything was paper on the inbound side. And so they said, you know what? We want to just start with the digital payment page and see how many of the inbound payments we get on a monthly basis we can convert to digital. And then if check is still a major problem, we'll go ahead and add that as well. And so it really puts us in, I think, a fairly unique position in the market to say, hey, look, no problem, I get it. However, we can be of help. Like we can turn that feature and function on and get you started.
That's awesome. What are some of the challenges that you've come across when it comes to building out products with your client versus just, hey, I'm going to build what I think they need?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say one of the biggest challenges is there are no standards.
Yeah,
and
that's why we call ourselves independent agents.
Right. And so by that, I mean, like you might have an entire base of agents, like 1,500 agencies that use one back-end software platform, right? Like Vertafore AMS 360 as an example. But what we have found is they all use it a little bit differently. So as you're trying to solve problems at scale, sometimes that can present a real challenge because maybe the workflows that they've designed in their back office are different from the next agent and the agent after that. And so making sure that we allow the software and the solution to be flexible enough to comprehend multiple uses of the core platform that we're integrating to on the back end, that can be a challenge at times.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I know just trying to integrate different pieces in our own agency is a challenge. So if you're somebody, working with an organization like ePay, working outside, trying to, gain traction inside individual agencies, and you've got all these multiple variables with different entities like different, carriers or different agency management systems, that's got to be tough. But you guys have pulled it off. So, I mean, kudos.
Yeah, look, and like I said, it's part of the iteration, right? Of continue to iterate it as we build out the product. And I talked about our Payables Connect product a little bit earlier. I mean, there's another prime example, right? And I know you have a real appreciation for this, as will your listeners. There's no standardization of statements when it comes from carriers, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, an individual carrier might have 20, 30 different statement varieties and formats coming out of just that one carrier. And so making sure that, we build enough intelligence into our solutions to accommodate for that it's a lot of fun, but it can be a challenge at times as well.
Yeah. And in that one in particular, so have you are you using AI kind of like you are on the check side?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Exact same use case of AI there. So it actually, in the case of the Payables Connect product, the AI has learned quicker, if you will, simply because once we teach it where to look on a traveler statement, for example, to find the policy number, the amount, the date, the term, then all the travelers statements that come in, it knows, this is travelers, boom. Here's where I go to grab the data elements. So the more statements that we see every month in the different formats from the carriers, we see the ability to auto reconcile those items start to increase exponentially as it gets smarter.
So what keeps you up at night? Is it when a carrier decides they're going to change the format on on everything they're sending? And you're like,
I would
now we
say
have to retrain it.
Yeah. Look, I mean, fortunately, some of the tools that are in the marketplace now, and the way that we've adapted them to the problems we're solving, like they can accommodate those changes relatively easily, and pick up on the nuances. So that hasn't been as big of an issue. I think, for me, as much as anything else, is like we know that we've built some incredible products, and our customers have been delighted by the use of them so far. It's
Yeah.
just continuing to make sure that we've got exposure to as many folks as possible to use them,
Yeah.
and continuing to drive the acceptance of them. So,
Yeah.
as much as anything else, it's just continuing to help this incredible industry called insurance that, we have the privilege of working in every day, adopt these new technologies to help them digitize their back office and
I
automate
love it.
these payment workflows.
Yeah. And I love that you're a convert, by the way, to the insurance world. Like
Yeah.
we've trapped you now and your soul belongs to us. So
That's it. That's it. I'm in. Like we talked about before I hopped on, I've been a part of several payments businesses, a lot around B2B payments, and just have really enjoyed my time in this industry. Great people, highly ethical,
yeah.
just a bunch of good actors to do business with. So it's been a real treat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. And we appreciate you making the jump. Certainly helped our agency in particular, like from a selfish standpoint, definitely helped what we're doing and how we do it and the efficiency with which we do it. But it's also good to have you here. What is there anything like I hear you talking about iterating different things. Is there anything that
Yeah.
new that you're creating that you can pull back the curtain at all on?
Yeah, yeah. It's not ready for prime time yet, but we're working
Okay,
on it.
even if you have to be vague.
Yeah, no, no. So, as we think about like some of the problems I described us helping
Yeah.
our customers solve,
Yeah.
another big problem that came up thematically is, reconciling commissions from carriers for direct bill
Mm.
business is a real
Hmm.
problem. And
Yes,
so,
sir.
you'll be hearing more about that from us here in the not
Okay.
too distant future.
I will tell you right now, please call me first because that is something that we
Okay.
are actively trying to solve. It has been a pain point for us. It just, I asked our head of finance, like how many hours, if we found somewhat of an automated solution or were able to take that piece off your plate, how many
Yeah.
hours would it save you? And she said, well, it would actually save me a couple of days a month. I was like,
Wow.
days? Because we're a larger agency. She's like,
Sure.
yeah, it would literally give me back a couple of days. I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. So, yeah,
Yeah.
please call me first.
Well, we'll do. Yeah, it's interesting. So that's consistent with what we heard. The other thing
Yeah.
that has really kind of come about as a theme as we've discussed this with our customers is that there's some real revenue breakage that happens there,
Mm,
because it takes so much time. Like they
yeah.
get to a point where they're like, it's close enough, even though I thought
Yeah.
like maybe there was a couple thousand extra dollars I was owed,
Yeah.
or a couple hundred even. Like I'm just
Yeah.
going to write it off because I don't want to spend any more time trying to figure it out.
Ooh,
So I
man.
think there's a real opportunity to help, increase the throughput of revenue for our customers as well and save them time in the back
Yeah.
office on a monthly
Yeah.
basis.
That's awesome. I'm eagerly awaiting news about that. And I appreciate you guys working on that problem for sure. For
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah. Well, hey, let's get into the rapid fire round. I want to get to know Mark Engels a little bit better and let our audience know. What's one piece of technology or software that you can't live without?
Yeah, I use Power BI in our business every day, Microsoft Power BI. So basically, as you think about ePay as a company, by way of context, we processed north of 5 million transactions last year. So
Wow.
we've got a tremendous amount of data that flows through the business. And so we put the Microsoft Power BI suite over the top of the business intelligence suite. And basically, like my team can slice and dice that data in a million different directions at an account
Wow.
level, at a transaction level, to
Wow.
really give us some great insight. I know I sounded like a Microsoft plug here, but
No, no, no.
but
I
it's
asked.
actually been tremendously valuable for me. It's sort of my instrument panel, if you will, on the
Yeah.
health of the business on any given day. So that's been a fun tool for us to use.
Wow, I've not heard of that one. So, but you're more in the space that would be wanting to use that, I guess. I don't know
No
if that's
doubt.
trickled down to the agency level yet.
Maybe not.
That's
Maybe
awesome.
not.
That's awesome. What's one book you're reading right now or that you've read recently on any subject that you want to share with folks?
Yeah, I just finished a book not too long ago called Younger Next Year.
Okay.
And so, as we talked about a little bit earlier, not to give my age away, but, I'm getting ready to be empty nesting. And so, basically the whole premise of the book was how do you maintain a healthy lifestyle as you get older so you can enjoy, your later years. And
Yeah.
look, I thought it was really interesting. Some of this stuff, I don't think any of the listeners would find all that earth shattering, right? Like, sensible diet, exercise
Yeah.
regularly. But there was actually
Yeah.
a pretty big component of the book that talked about mental health and staying sharp mentally,
Oh yeah.
particularly as like you leave the workforce and you go
Mm.
into your retirement years.
Yeah.
All of us spend 30, 40 years, whatever the number is, like going to work every day, right?
Yeah.
And being mentally engaged in some professional activity. And for a lot of folks, when they retire, it's over.
Yeah.
And so their mind starts to wither a little bit. And so
Yeah.
making sure that you've got activities, even if they weren't necessarily related to your profession, but just hobbies that you're interested in to keep your mind sharp as you get older. That really spoke to me as I think about sort of the next chapter of my life. After I'm done running cool companies like ePay.
Yeah. You're not allowed to retire yet, by the way, just so you know.
I'm not planning on doing it anytime soon, so no worries.
Okay, cool.
Just prepping.
Just want to make sure we're clear.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. What's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? Speaking of younger.
Yeah, yeah. I think as much as anything, I would just say like having some grit and tenacity will take you a really long way in
Mm,
the professional world.
yeah.
As I look back on my career, it hasn't always been up and to the right. Like with everybody, there's been bumps along the way. And I
Yeah.
think what's really served me well is just like being able to roll up my sleeves, put my head down, and get after solving the problems.
Yeah.
I think if you can do that consistently, first of all, I think it's where you learn the most about yourself, but also like how you grow the most as a professional. If it was
Yeah.
all easy, like I don't know that we'd necessarily have the opportunities to become a heck of a lot better. And
Yeah.
so embrace the challenges, right? And just get to work on solving the problems that they present. I think that'd be the biggest thing I'd tell myself as I get started.
That's awesome. And I bet that served you well as you're building products with clients and not just for them because you're you're really having to probably take some things that they say with a grain of salt maybe and be able to feel like you can forge ahead if you need to. But also I think just the fact that you guys have even when I asked you like what are you building now and I appreciate that you just talk about the problem that you're trying to solve. That's that's awesome. I mean, that takes grit to want to keep going because I could imagine that you guys would at some point kind of feel like, well, we could kind of rest on our laurels here. I mean, we got some really great products, but the fact that you guys keep going is awesome. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think, collectively as a team, it's what gives all of us a lot of energy. And it makes the job fun, candidly.
Yeah.
It's what makes it a really cool place to come to work every day.
Yeah. It's awesome. Well, before we wrap up, what's one piece of advice based on what we talked about today that you would leave our viewers and our listeners with?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things I talk to our customers a lot about is like mapping out their digital journey within their
Mm,
agency.
yeah.
And if you haven't started yet, it's time. Whether
Yeah.
ePay is a part of that digital journey or not, we hope we can be. But more broadly, like understanding where you want to take your agency in this digital era, and mapping out a path on how to get there. If you're not thinking about it yet, I can tell you right now, your competitors are, and you stand a real shot at getting left behind. In a world where we can pick this phone up and in 2 clicks of a thumb, like have something delivered to your doorstep the next day. Like that has become the expectation of people when they consume goods and services, right? And so why
Yeah.
should insurance be any different? So start down that path and start thinking about where you are today, where you want to end up, and then the help that you need along the way.
I love it, man. Couldn't have said it better myself. But that's why I asked you to be on the show as a guest, because you're the expert. If people want to get more Mark Engels in their life, where do they go to find you or connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So, I think our marketing team does a great job on our website of kind of laying out everything that we have to offer. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mark Engels. You see my name here on the podcast. Or, look, you can email directly at mark.engels@epay3.com. Always happy to hear from folks.
Brave and bold. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you really do have that grit. People emailing you now. No,
no
I'm
doubt.
teasing. That's awesome. And hey, you stick with me for after the show, but I really appreciate you being on with us today, Mark, again. And I'm excited that we get to continue this, because every time we get to talk, I feel like I learned something new from you. So really appreciate you being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. Great to connect again.
Absolutely. For everybody else, grow big or go home. Take care, guys.